Hey, how's it going, guys? We are not live tonight. We had to find this tiny little nugget of time where all three of us were available. We've managed to do that to make this recording, but we are back for episode 66 of Modern Men. Tonight we'll be covering Avenger No Surrender, which almost kind of made me want to surrender, I'll be honest. But before we get into that, let's meet our panel. Of course, I'm Carson, and over there next to me, we got the majestic beard of ComicManAndy. I'm just waiting for like this giant comb to replace your tiny little blue one eventually. How's the beard tonight, Andy?
It never surrenders, man. It just keeps going.
And welcoming back this week to Modern Men, he was on vacation line. Man, I'm on vacation this week. Couldn't I have just taken vacation during this? Well, we got DruManchu back. What's going on, Drew?
You could have taken vacation. You would have missed one heck of a read, Carson. This is one of the better events in the last 20 years of comics, in my opinion.
Wow, 20 years. Okay. Well, before we get too crazy into it, Drew, I know you had a couple thoughts on Marvels since you weren't here last week. Did you want to share any of those thoughts?
Yeah, let's talk about Marvels real quick. Alex Ross made this thing happen, and it smacks of everybody wants to compare it to Kingdom Come because those are the two big overarching universe, events that he put together where he imagined these heroes and villains in his own super hyper realistic painted style. I think that Marvel's is the better of the two, in my opinion. When you think of Kingdom Come and Marvel's, I love the Marvel timeline, and I love the fact that this is a jaunt through Marvel history, and there's no Superman in it, so it doesn't have to suck.
He almost looked like he was in pain saying that.
Yeah,
look, man, it was better than Kingdom Come. Marvel should have been on the list much earlier in this show's history, but we just kept denying Chris Barrett the pleasure.
No, I mean the chat and the fans knew better and didn't get voted on until other better reads like Kingdom Come happened. But anyway,
there's no freaking priest in it or pastor or whatever. It's just got the photographer guy who actually contributes to the story. It doesn't just wait until the end when the Spectre's like, "You're important," and he's like, "Why?" And like, nobody knows. And then
having a lot of characters who contribute minimally to the story. Let's go ahead and talk about tonight's read, Avengers No Surrender. So, Drew, why did you pick this one, and how did it come up?
I loved Avengers No Surrender because it was, when it came out, it was a weekly book. The Avengers title went to weekly publication. For those of you following along with the Marvel history, we had Civil War, then we had Secret Empire, and then the breath of fresh air after Secret Empire was Avengers No Surrender. It took the Avengers concept that had kind of grown inside of the universe out of control. There were, 45 different Avengers teams at this point. There's like US Avengers, there was Occupy Avengers, there was the Uncanny Avengers, there was the Champions, but everybody was Avengers. And this kind of was a story that played with time a little bit. There's a little bit of Contest of Champions going on here where there's a game being played. This is the story that gives us the debut and the return of the Hulk as the Immortal Hulk. And at the same time, this is kind of a spotlight on all the C and D list Avengers. There are so many of them that this book goes out of its way. This story goes out of its way to take the main players off the board pretty much immediately and gives you the opportunity to see how some of these characters that haven't had a chance to shine or have been underserved by being in lesser Avenger books, let's just say, gives them the chance to be celebrated a little bit. You get to see some great teamwork and some different pairings of characters that I really enjoyed.
All right, Andy, what's your first impressions of all this?
I felt like the new kid at his first job, just waiting to see where all the cards fall at the end of the day. These new teams that I'm not really aware of, or people I haven't met before, and a few leaders here and some clicks there and some scuffles at work. It was like walking into a brand new job.
Yeah, for me, I kind of feel like you guys probably felt while reading Justice League: A Tornado's Path. Like I had no clue who a good chunk of these characters were. But I will say this: thank goodness Marvel always has that like big map of characters at the beginning of each book. Even though like this one was pretty hilarious, the amount of like little circles and characters they can jam on one page. It was just top to bottom full of characters. So I did appreciate that little chart they had. It was just kind of goofy to a point, though. It's just like, how many characters do they need in this like already bloated story? But I'm trying to. I mean, overall, like I did appreciate the fact that you said it was a pretty quick read, even though it was, good God, 16 issues. We actually all read all 16 issues. It all read pretty fast once you got into it, but I think just that was the most merciful part of it. But I don't know, Drew. Why do we need all these Avengers teams for? Like, what does Occupy Avengers? That is my first question.
All right. The thing is, you don't need all these Avengers teams, and most of these Avengers teams went away after No Surrender, and they kind of boil it down to just the champions and the Avengers.
Should be, in my opinion.
So, but like at this point in time, when All New, All Different Marvel came out, you had the All New, All Different Avengers, this is part of that run. You had the Uncanny Avengers, which was the Unity Squad, which is left over from the Uncanny or the X-Men versus Avengers event, right? Then you had the U.S. Avengers, which was basically AIM, which is great because Roberto DaCosta, the Sunspot, takes over AIM. He buys it and changes it from Advanced Idea Mechanics to Avengers Idea Mechanics. And you know, all the Beekeeper guys, they all work for the Avengers now. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of throwaway characters on that book, but a lot of them are really fun. Like, you're going to notice the Red Hulk in this is not the Red Hulk you remember. He's got this Hour of Power thing. It's on the fritz because of what happened to him during the A Secret Empire spinoff. Occupy Avengers is basically, it's Red Wolf, right? And what's his name? Hawkeye, right? And you're like, Occupy Avengers? What does that even mean? Well, there's this thing called Occupy Wall Street, right? Where it's just like social justice people just hanging out in the street, occupying Wall Street. They're like, oh, you know what? We need to do social justice Avengers. And Hawkeye in Civil War II shot Bruce Banner in the head with a gamma arrow, killing the Hulk. And everybody was like, oh, yeah, you're a bad guy now. And he's like, what? I'm not bad. Hulk told me to do it. And so he basically just fucks off to the desert. And he's like, you know what? I want to help people like the A-Team. But there's only two of us because Red Wolf is the only other person who's like, yeah, I'll do this thing. And everybody else is like, fuck off, Hawkeye. And the book didn't last very long, and it's not very good. But there are actually enjoyable characters in it. So I was happy to see Red Wolf come back in this and see Hawkeye kind of get a moment of redemption from all the nonsense that happened to him during Civil War II. You also at this point have the New Avengers, which is just a new group of Avengers, and what is the other team? Oh, I talked about the champions already, and they get frozen, taken off the board pretty quickly as well. So you got all these Avengers. You put them in a hodgepodge. You take the cream of the crop and you scrape it off and you put it on the side, and you like whatever's left is what we're dealing with here.
Cream of the slop.
But like, I think that you get really great interactions with a lot of older Avengers that you haven't seen interact as Avengers in a long time. Like, there's some really good Beast and Power Man stuff, or a Wonder Man stuff going on in here. You also get Beast interacting a lot with Nadia Pym, who's Hank Pym's illegitimate daughter, who's the Unstoppable Wasp. Which is kind of confusing because Janet's in here too. It's like too many wasps. You also get the opportunity to see like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver come back together. Quicksilver's got his own drama going on from the Uncanny Avengers run, but you're getting Avengers from every time period and every team kind of mixing it up, and they're all the Avengers you wouldn't expect to see. Like, you wouldn't expect to see Rogue and Hercules and Quicksilver teaming up with Nadia Pym with Living Lightning there. It's just not what you like when you're like, oh, big summer event for the Avengers. You're like, okay, where's Cap? Where's Hulk? Where's Iron Man? Unfortunately, you don't get those A players, but fortunately, I think this book really shines in the way that these characters interact with each other, and the way that they disagree, and the conflict that comes from that within the battles. And I think it reminds me a lot of, you mentioned Tornado's Path, but that run of like Justice League, where it was like all the nobodies in Batman, right, who were on the Justice League.
Yep.
That's kind of what this reminds me of. It's like, okay, let's get some of these D+, C- players and see what happens with them.
Andy, you're doing a lot of laughing over there. I want to hear what you're thinking, man.
He's not kidding about the cream of the crop being left to the side. I gotta know though, why does the Red Hulk look like Burt Gomer from Tremors?
It's Robert Maverick, man. It's General Robert Maverick, and he gets this DNA altering like watch that gives him an hour of power. He can turn into the Red Hulk for 1 hour. And you know, he can also dial it back so he can be like semi Hulk for like 2 hours. You know, it's kind of a neat concept, but at the same time, it's completely superfluous. You get some really great scenes with the Red Hulk in this, and you're like, if he was a real Hulk, the battles would probably be better. But I like the fact that he keeps coming back for more before he gets absolutely demolished by the Immortal Hulk in this towards the end.
Yeah, I couldn't read any of his lines throughout this whole book without hearing them in Burt Gomer's voice from Tremors.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. This guy is the, you know, late 80s, early 90s action stars, you know, comedic foil. You know, he's not the action star. He's not Arnold. He's Jesse Ventura, you know?
Yeah, it reminded me of Our Man pretty much, but yeah, with that Burt Gummer twist. I wish it was just Burt Gummer now. That's an awesome idea, Andy. I wish I would have had his voice in the head the whole time. But I guess the crux of the story, like, and it's a crazy one, is there's basically, like you said, a contest of champions on Earth where the Grandmaster has been challenged by, I guess we're calling him the Challenger. That's the best.
The Challenger, yes.
The Challenger.
Well, he's the original Grandmaster.
For the title of Grandmaster, yes. And they have decided to use Earth as their playground for their 2 select hand-picked, basically chess pieces to have this fight. One of them is the Black Order, which I think a lot of us are familiar with because of the Infinity War movie, but the other team I was not as familiar with.
The Lethal Legion.
Yeah, so you get this Lethal Legion.
Yeah. But the Lethal Legion is basically just a collection of underutilized side characters from throughout the years in like Marvel Cosmic. You have a Kree Warrior. You have the Blood Brothers, who were there for the origination of Drax and Thanos in Iron Man 55. And there's a bunch of other characters on there, like the new Metal Master is in the Lethal Legion. They're not very well fleshed out characters, but their designs are cool, and you get to see them. And basically, Mark Waid and Jim Zub take the Black Order and their Lethal Legion, and they're just like, yeah, these are action figures, smash, smash, smash. Yeah. And I honestly, I can't find anything to dislike about that concept.
Yeah, I was definitely happy to see the Black Order back. I do enjoy those characters. But yeah, like basically the Grandmaster, he handpicked the Black Order, and the Challenger gets the Lethal Legion or whatever those characters are called. And yeah, their playground is Earth. And when they move Earth, for some reason they decide to freeze your A-list superheroes. However they pick that, who knows? But basically, when someone goes off the board, someone can come back on the board. You find out, and that's a thing. And yeah, basically, it leaves your team captains more or less as the Falcon, Rogue, and what was the other one? Was it Sunspot?
Roberto da Costa. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Citizen V, as he's known. I mean, you guys might know that as Zemo's code name on the Thunderbolts, but he becomes Citizen V when he takes over AIM. He calls himself Citizen V. I don't know why. that might be explained in some sort of tie-in to some other event that I didn't read. But yeah, I would say that U.S. Avengers, if you're looking to find a different book with kind of a different feel to it, that's one to check out. If you're looking for the regular cast of characters that that's one to avoid, because that's where the new Red Hulk comes in. Sunspot is the most notable member of the team. You also have Tony Ho, who is Yinsen, the guy who helped Iron Man build his first armor. It's his daughter. She's the one who has that Iron Patriot looking mech armor. That's pretty cool that you see Red Hulk dons at a certain point in this book. It's just a weird team, man.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like. I mean, I'm definitely intrigued by the idea. I did enjoy the Red Hulk in this. I'll be honest. Like I had no idea who this character was. I did like the Hour Man concept, but yeah, he had that funny look where he had that sweet mustache finally.
Right, and you're like, why did the Red Hulk always have that mustache? He should have. Thunderbolt Ross should have kept the mustache when he hulked out. It would have been great. And then finally, I think Jim Zub was writing U.S. Avengers and was like, you know what? We're putting a Red Hulk on this team, and we're giving him the mustache.
But the ultimate wrench gets thrown in when, there's a lot of conflicting opinions on these teams. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's one of the original Avengers shows up. Voyager? Andy, do you remember Voyager being on the original Avengers?
Nope. And second guess myself, and then at the end, yeah. Totally threw me for a loop.
I love the way that they put Valerie Vector, the Voyager, how they just retconned her in a couple of panels, basically. They were like, remember when we did this? And it's like, check Avengers issue number this. Remember when we did that? Oh, let's put this other, So she's been peppered into continuity in a way that you're like, wait, this never happened. Who is this chick? What is the deal? Why does everybody remember her as an Avenger? But the way that, they use the Marvel's editorial tools of letting you know where people came in and out of different storylines, they do a really great job of just like faking it, just being like, yep, she was in this issue. Yep, she defeated this person in this issue. Yep, she disappeared in this issue. And the fact that everybody immediately knows who she is kind of interesting as well. But it also brings back the B plot of this whole arc, which really only goes about halfway through, which is the Jarvis story.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to bring that up. I felt like this thing was shoehorned in for no reason. But yeah, Jarvis, he's pretty much hospitalized. Would have been a good reason to be hospitalized. He pushes a kid out of harm's way. He gets in the hospital. But no, there's more to it. He's in a coma for some reason. And there's like some wrapped around his brain. The Beast has to get shrunk down to shove an antidote in. And then they have to basically create a storyline for this new Wasp to go take this thing out with Beast. And I just did not care for this part of the storyline. I feel like this could have been an opportunity to trim down some of those 16 issues. My
stars and garters, man. Beast is a fantastic character. I like the fact that they gave Beast something to do here. And I like the Unstoppable Wasp. I think that Nadia Pym is an interesting enough character as a legacy character, as a brand new science genius to bring in. She has her own hangups with being a teenage girl, that, she's very emotional, and maybe that might be a little bit stereotypical, but seeing these two characters interact to save Jarvis, who is such a big part of Avengers history, but at this point lost upon anybody who didn't read comics in the 80s. When's the last time you saw Jarvis involved directly in a story?
I was surprised that he was still alive.
Right. And I thought, honestly, when this first happened, I was like, oh, they brought Jarvis in so they can kill him off, because nobody knows Jarvis as a man. Everybody knows Jarvis as the Tony Stark AI. But the thing I loved about Jarvis is as soon as Jarvis comes out of his coma, he's like, wait, she wasn't never known Avenger? like immediately Jarvis is like, nope, I know everything about the damn Avengers. Like I change your toilet paper. I make sure your trash goes down on Tuesdays. I know that she was never an Avenger, and that's kind of a cool deal to take him and make his like him coming back from this turmoil lead into the bigger story overall.
What about you, Andy? You like Jarvis?
I did. I do agree that it would have been a great opportunity to kind of trim it back a little bit. But as a first-time reader of this series, I liked the introduction to the character from the first reader's perspective. And I also like the fact that they were just digging through his gourd to try to find out what was going on with him. And then it added a little science-y aspect when there's kind of some heavy-hitting magic in here and lots of fists. I mean, lots of fighting. So I kind of liked the Hank McCoy kind of science aspect.
All right, so the way these teams, they score their points, they have to get these MacGuffins. And these
Pyramoids.
MacGuffins, whatever you want to call them. They even Sam
What the
even
fuck
calls
is a
them
pyramoid?
Yeah, so there's these gimmicks that basically that the teams have to collect more or less. And basically if they touch it, the team member's done, basically. It actually appears to the Avengers when, their team member touches it, they die. They don't know any better. So I think I can't remember what the first two MacGuffins. I think there's like a fire one and a not an ice one just yet. I can't remember what the second one is. Like it's Earth. So basically, they have the 5 elements from Captain Planet. They break them up and then they have to go get them. So they have Earth, water, fire, wind, and heart. Basically, I can't remember exactly. And they have to go get them. And basically, the first guy to go is the Human Torch, who's also on the Avengers now.
Yeah, Human Torch was on was it All New Avengers? All New Avengers or Unity Squad? I think it was on the Unity Squad at this point. Yeah, he was on the Unity Squad when they relaunched and it was like Deadpool and Rogue and Synapse and Quicksilver was originally on the team. So there's some Brother Voodoo was on the team as well. So yeah, he was part of the Avengers Unity Squad because there was no Fantastic Four, if you guys remember. The family was gone. It was just Thing was on the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they put Human Torch on one of the Avengers teams.
Yeah, so I can't remember who got the Earth one, but it was one of the baddies. So they scored a point for their team.
Well, yeah, somebody nobody knows from the Lethal Legion.
Yeah, the Lethal Legion. So that immediately got them a point. But yeah, then they introduced the other two, and I think the Black Order gets the next point if I remember right. But then the guy from Occupy Avengers, it's not Hawkeye. He's like the smartest guy in the whole book because he's like, hey, if I go get that, like Earth gets a point, so I'm just gonna go get that. And everyone's like, no, you'll die. He's like, well, that's the way. Like, do you want 7 billion people to die? I'm going to go get us the point.
That's Red Wolf, man.
Yeah, Red Wolf. Like, he's the smartest guy in the entire book, in my opinion. So
Red Wolf is a great character. I love that guy.
Yeah, I'm definitely more interested in that character after reading this. Of all the 1,000 characters introduced here, I think Red Wolf was, and then, of course, Red Hulk, I guess the 2 red guys. They were definitely like the 2 that interest me the most out of the new characters I'm not familiar with at all. So that's actually what I was going to ask to Andy. Out of all these, like, I don't even know how many characters we're exposed to in this whole thing. It's probably 40 or 50 realistically. Did you have a particular favorite or one you want to see more of?
Not a particular single character. The hook for me in the book was the introduction of the villain teams, actually. Most of these characters I've at least heard of, even though I don't have a lot of time spent reading about them or I'm not super familiar about them. But the villains somehow for me made it way more fun than what Drew said. It was a bunch of like D+ or C list characters. The villains to me were like a breath of fresh air and kind of hooked me into the book. The Metal Master battling with Jane Foster for Thor's hammer. That was sweet, actually. And that's the first thing that comes to mind in the moment. Glaive. Actually, I think that one character in the book for me was Glaive. If I had to pick
Corvus Glaive is a badass.
Learning more about him and about how he can't die and his scythe is indestructible, and that's the only way to kill him is if you destroy that. But I think they said it was indestructible, so he's indestructible. And then his wife and everything that was, what was her name again?
Proxima Midnight.
Yeah, Proxima Midnight.
The thing about when you see the Black Order in this book, and also in like they did a mini series about the Black Order where each book kind of focused on one member of the Black Order, which was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And they really showed up. They showed up for the first time in Infinity. And when you see the film versions, the MCU versions of Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight, they're kind of not nearly as fleshed out as they give the Ebony Maw a lot of room to play in that movie. And you don't get to know very much about the rest of the Black Order. But man, Corvus Glaive is a badass. That dude is super duper tough. And he's a hell of a fighter, and you know his wife is probably a better fighter than he is. It's seeing them go at it with the Avengers and the Lethal Legion was fun. I really enjoyed how these villain characters plugged into this whole story. Andy, I completely agree with you there. But I think that my favorite part of this was seeing a lot of team ups between these characters that we either haven't seen in a long time, like Wonder Man and Beast. I thought that was a really nice piece there. I love Simon. I think Wonder Man's great. I think that he had an opportunity at the end of this book where he's like, you know what, I'm a pacifist. And like how pacifist superhero is kind of a passe thing, but I think they worked that really well into this. And I love just seeing Hercules on panel. Any more Hercules is better for me.
Yeah, I feel like Simon was one of my other favorite characters toward the end of this, and I feel like he would have fit in more with the Occupy Avengers team of Hawkeye and Red Wolf.
Yeah, his story was told through the Unity Squad. So like he was, I guess, dead for a while, and then was part of Rogue for a while, and then came back into his own body. It's, wow. Hey, comics.
Yeah. So the other thing that's going on is the Challenger, he has an ace up his sleeve. It turns out he's pretty much made sure the Hulk is immortal now, and he's got him waiting in the wings as this fifth MacGuffin is introduced. And somehow has to do with like ghosts and souls and that stuff, which it's only exemplified once until Voyager shows up and goes into business basically for herself and takes it, puts it in like the Avengers safe or wherever they took it. I don't know. It's a little confusing in my opinion. And this is where Jarvis wakes up and reveals the Beast and New Wasp. But like, hey, like that Voyager girl, like I don't know her. Like, do you guys know her? You shouldn't. So I kind of wish that was like Jarvis just should have woke up there, in my opinion. No problem. So, but I did enjoy that part. But yeah, this is kind of where the second half of the book kicks off. It's just where Immortal Hulk is engaged in getting this last MacGuffin, and pretty much the Avengers just have to form a wall, and a lot of them don't stand a chance. So this may have been my favorite part, honestly, is just Hulk versus the Avengers, basically. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, agreed. He just starts rampaging on everybody, and they think they have a shot, and each one of them just seems to be utterly shocked because Bruce Banner just isn't there. It's just the straight Hulk, and all he is pure rage, almost evil rage. And I'm glad they landed this in the book like this, because I almost felt like I was starting to get a little bored with the read, and then we get to this point. And they actually take what, Drew? 2-3 issues where they're kind of teasing it a little bit. See the green eyes and like the glowing almost teeth in the dark 2 issues before the Hulk shows up. Yeah, that tease.
And then it's like kind of the little post-credit sequence is like, don't worry, this motherfucker's coming. And when he finally gets there, it does not disappoint.
I think that's my whole favorite part of this entire book were the tease portions for that, because I found myself, okay, come on. When are we getting back to? Oh, here we go. Oh, wait. Now, when am I going to get back to this again? I think that really kind of sold me on getting further into the book, and then when they delivered, they definitely didn't disappoint.
Yeah, it definitely reminded me of Doomsday is Coming. So I definitely liked it for that reference.
Yeah.
If nothing else, Al Ewing at least used this book to really get over the Immortal Hulk. And I think that that was kind of like the true star of all of this was eventually Banner and Hulk, especially like once you realize the Hulk, he is the Hulk, but he's also smart. And he's angry.
Yes,
it's not Bruce Banner, and that's the most chilling part about it.
Right, and I forget which character it is, but somebody's like Bruce, and he's like, "You think Bruce is in here right now?"
Wonder Man.
Yeah, it's like you have no clue what's going on here. I'm gonna take my big green fist and shove it up your ass, and like. I know you guys look, there was a lot of talk about how long this book was, 16 issues. You guys don't know who any of these characters are, and they're all, at best, B- C+ players. And we're getting a lot of, mindless smashing together of these action figures here. And I think that this book was such a breath of fresh air to people who were reading Marvel at the time, because I'm not going to say that it wasn't good for a long time, but it was very heavy as far as the events and how they would interact with continuity for a while. You got the Civil War II stuff split. I mean, at the end of that, you got Hulk's dead, Stark's off the table. Captain Marvel is the worst villain in the universe, right? And then you go after that, and there are a couple different books that are trying to redeem Carol throughout the next run of stuff, which leads all into Secret Empire, where it's like, oh no, the whole world is under the control of Hydra, and Captain America is the worst bad guy ever, right? So you take that, and everything from Civil War II through Secret Empire had this like air of political intrigue to it, right? And it was like, who can you trust, and who's on what side, and why are you on this side, and what's going on with here, and what's this character thinking, and are they going to turn on this person, and all these flip-flop heel turns and face turns left and right with the universe. And then finally you got intergalactic bad guys making bad guys fight, where the heroes have to come together and figure out how to save the world. And all it is punching and stomping and people getting their ass kicked. And it's a giant vehicle to bring the Hulk back in a huge way that just really pays off through the whole thing. And there's a little bit of bait and switch going on here and there, especially with the Voyager thing. And especially, we got this big, Earth-wide thing going on. Who's going to take care of it? Well, Cap's frozen, Black Panther's frozen, Spider-Man's frozen. So who's going to take care of it? So there's a little bit of baity switchy stuff going on there, but overall, this is just a weekly book where every week you picked it up and you're like, who's fighting who today? And like, oh, what new nugget are we going to get about what's eventually going on with Voyager? And they finally teased the Hulk. Then it's just like, all right, when we get in the Hulk, and finally, like 3 issues later, you're treated to like a 4-issue arc of the Hulk just wrecking shit for like 4 issues. It's in my mind, I think that it really paid off and was a real big breath of fresh air, especially for the way that it's kind of, they're big battles in this, but it's really a light story when it comes down to it.
This is the first time I think I'm going to say this. I think this book actually would have read a lot better for me in single issues week to week.
It was great week to week.
A lot of stuff that we've read, or a lot of stuff that I read that's modern over the last couple of years, I'm like, man, this is a great read, but I still find myself going back to reread stuff and close up loops and tie off loose ends and whatnot and try to remember what's going on. And I feel like this, like you've put it pretty plainly, just who's fighting who week to week. It'd be a very fun read week to week without worrying so much about this or that or what happened. And I don't think I've ever felt that way about anything we've read, thinking that it would have actually read better for me as single issues when they were coming out.
Yeah, so getting back to the story, basically, like the funny thing is about it is Hulk wins more or less. They can't stop him. He gets to the thing, And the Grandmaster's like, yeah, take the prize. We're going to win it all. And he's just like, we're going to win all right. He like just smashes it, just smashes hopes and dreams of becoming the Grandmaster. So that's what Hulk wanted to do. He just, he smashed that. And he turns back into Bruce, and Bruce is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And that's when the Challenger kind of goes into business for himself. Meanwhile, you have Voyager. She saw that, the Avengers, she saw the fighting spirit basically and decided to switch sides. So now she's going to help the Avengers see this thing out, which helps them get teleported to, where the Grandmaster's doing his thing. But the Challenger, once again, he is just not having it. He goes to Earth, and he's just going to write. He's like, I want to wreck this board because everyone, sucks, basically. So
he's that family game of Monopoly where it's like he's like, ha, I got all the railroads, I got Park Place, I got Boardwalk, I own all the utilities, people are paying me left and right, and somehow he goes bankrupt and flips the fucking board. It's like, I had it all sewed up.
Yeah, so meanwhile, there's the subplot with Quicksilver, who he keeps seeing this little ball of like blue light floating around, and he deducts that that's what's freezing the other superheroes. And since he's fast, he's the only one that can see it. And meanwhile, he needs the help of, I think, Voodoo and Wanda to make him go faster. And they pretty much just pull the old Crisis Barry Allen thing where he runs so fast, he just disappears into the Speed Force or wherever. So that kind of creates something for Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch to do after No Surrender. Which I did not read the one shot or the series Quicksilver No Surrender. So
it's actually a 4-issue series.
Oh God.
And it's a comic book.
Cool.
I like Pietro. I think he's a fun character. I think him being an absolute dick to everybody around him is like so very, very much his dad, who technically isn't his dad anymore. And I think that Wanda and Pietro are like cornerstones of the Marvel Universe, in my opinion. And the fact that their origins are so murky now does a disservice to them and the universe as a whole. And getting to see them get a little bit more shine was fun for me. I will tell you, I read that Quicksilver series and I kept reading it, even though I wasn't happy with it. But more Quicksilver for me is a good thing. I enjoy the character. It just wasn't what you needed to be. Do not, if you feel the need to go and read No Surrender, do not feel the need to read the Quicksilver mini.
Good. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Pietro in this one. He just came off too whiny, and he's always challenging the leadership decisions and getting himself hurt at the end of the day. And I was so happy when he ran into the not Speed Force because we didn't have to hear him anymore.
The thing I like about Pietro is he's when you have a team, right? He's obviously one of the top players on the team, right? But he has no interest in playing with anyone below his level. He's just such a prick. He's just got this air of superiority, and if he was raised by Magneto, where the fuck you think that came from? But it's like he's like on X Factor. Like he's clearly the best guy on the team. But if you can't play with the other players, what are you on the team for? He's got the same arc in every team book.
What'd you think of him, Andy?
I didn't really think much of him at all, honestly. He got lost in the mix of a lot of other characters, and I'm not a massive team kind of reader, so to speak. Larger teams, all these extra layers, it's just kind of a lot to follow, and things get lost in the mix. Speaking of which, I'm kind of curious on your guys' thoughts are on how the narration went for you guys in the book, because honestly, besides the colors, most of the time I couldn't tell who was narrating.
I agree.
That's a lot of what the colors are for, is to color code who's talking, so it will help you be able to tell who's who. And I think that they did a good job with that, and I think that the color coding really helped. But at the same time, you got 3 people writing this book, right? It was Al Ewing, Mark Waid, and Jim Zub were writing this book. And you had 5 different artists on the art team overall. So this was just like a big, giant team effort. I think with as consistent as the production of the book. I know Carson had some negative things to say about Paco Medina's art style compared to Pepe Larraz, but I feel like overall it reads like one book.
Actually, I really like Pepe Larraz. He was the star artist in my opinion. I didn't mind Paco Medina. I've seen his work before. It was the other whoever three artists. I just did not care for their art at all. Like there was one issue. I don't even know. I can't remember the artist's name or the issue, but there was one. It's like right dead in the middle of the whole run. And I just felt like they had to check this issue out ASAP. It just felt like the most rushed art I've seen in a comic in a long time.
You know what? I will give you that. I think that, but for the most part, like when you see the Pepe Larraz art, the Paco Medina art, this doesn't look like a weekly book. This looks like a book that came out monthly that they took their time with for the most part, in my opinion. I think that the art wise, there is a lot going on battle wise and who these characters are and getting establishing shots and big splash pages and I feel like this book came out with no delays as a weekly book, was kind of announced out of nowhere, so it felt like it kind of came up quickly. But yeah, I get the feeling that they had probably a lot of this in the bag before they even announced it. But it came out at a solid clip, weekly for each issue, and man, I was really impressed with the way it came out.
Yeah, I do agree with the fact that reading through it, it did feel like one seamless book. But yeah, there was that one issue where I was kind of like, wait a second. And I'm trying to find it. But yeah, Carson, it's somewhere in the middle there. I was like, this is definitely a little bit different.
Was it the Beast Nadia Pym issue?
It may have been.
Because a lot of that,
I think so. Because once again,
a lot of that I think was the the flashback art.
Yeah, that could have been it.
I don't know. Overall, I think I really enjoyed the way that the story was told.
And then there was like one of the backups, like that, because I had like that 1-page like summary at the end of, about some of the character designs or the story plots and stuff. And there was one where they're talking about Voyager, and they wanted to make her look like she was designed in the Silver Age, so they brought in Mike Allred to design the character. And I was just like, well, where's Mike Allred? Why couldn't we get him in here? I was like, but at least for the flashback scenes or something, because obviously phenomenal artist, but he would have not blended in with Medina and Larraz, obviously. But it would have been great to see his art in this rather than some of the other art we got, in my opinion. But yeah, to sum up the end of the story, basically, the Challenger, he's trying to wipe the board. Quicksilver sacrifices himself to bring back the rest of the Avengers. So they go fight the Challenger. They almost lose, but they don't. Meanwhile, with the Grandmaster, his daughter Voyager goes and teleports like some of, I think, the Unity team there. And there's one, what's his name? Lightning, basically.
Yeah.
Who is just the C-list of the C-list, I guess. And he's the one who actually comes up and saves the day.
The great thing I think about Lightning is the fact that in the first issue, Lightning is trying to bust this criminal organization or whatever. And he hasn't even, he didn't even give him a fake name. He's like, nobody's going to know who I am. And finally the boss comes in. He's like, what do you guys think you're doing? And they're like, what? We're just playing cards with this dude. And he's like, that's the living Lightning.
Luckily he kept those cards because the Grandmaster, they tried to reason with him, even talked to Wonder Man. And he was influenced to reason because of what Wonder Man told him. And he was just like, you need to stop because this is right. And Grandmaster doesn't care until he takes out a pack of cards. And then he starts making these crazy bets. And Grandmaster, he's going to play that game. So what did you think about the ending sequence here, Andy?
I actually liked it. I thought it was kind of cool to kind of take this very spacey, very otherworldly or out of this world contest and bring it down to earth with a game of poker, right? Lightning sits down and what does he do? He ends up bluffing him in the long haul, right?
Absolutely. That's pretty much all he does.
That was a ton of fun. The guy's like really ballsy, and he goes on to say that it's not about being remembered or, it's about making the sacrifice or making the play, so to speak, for the better of everyone. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of digging this. I'm kind of getting it. I love the fact that they basically boiled it down to a game of poker with the Grandmaster, and he bluffed the hell out of him, and he won.
Yeah, and he never even shows Grandmaster what his winning or losing hand would have
And
been.
I like that they never showed that through
that
the
had
rest
to be
of the
awful.
book. Yeah.
Unless it was 2 aces, he was losing. What did you think, Drew?
I think that this ended pretty well. I like the fact that they took the Grandmaster and like the I don't know what they called, Eternal. They're not Eternals. What are they called? The Masters of the Universe or whatever. I don't know. The He-Mans.
I like Masters of the Universe. That's good.
Yeah, the Masters of the Universe. Like so you got the Grandmaster, the Collector, the Gardener,
Gambler.
and they, they were of the same ilk. They were kin, to speak.
Elderlies.
Elders of the universe. That's what they're called. The Elders of the Universe. And and the fact that, the Grandmaster wasn't the Grandmaster. He's like, the original Grandmaster was the challenger, and he's the one who even kind of lays it out for him. He's like, oh yeah, we just call ourselves, or what we do. So the collector is the collector, and that guy's the gardener, and I'm the Grandmaster. You can be the gamesman. And he's like, we'll see about that. He steals his title, and this whole thing is basically about him trying to get one up on his little brother who ended up beating him, and he puts everything on the line. I really dig it. I think that it's a cool way of bringing the Grandmaster into it, and having him not be the giant big bad, but more of a sympathetic character while being a bad guy. I thought it was really, really dope. I enjoyed it.
All right, yeah. So then they had the last issue, which is pretty much just a bona fide epilogue issue. I don't really feel like... I mean, I think the best thing, if I remember right, that's where Jarvis has his speech to Banner around that point, where he was basically just talking about how he is an Avenger and he needs to be a hero and all that stuff. So that was kind of a cool moment between those two. But other than that, I don't remember too much noteworthy stuff from the absolute final issue, which I think was 690, I think, something like that. So
yeah,
that pretty much wraps up No Surrender. So I guess before we get into final scores, I think I asked who was your one of your favorite characters to get to know. Who was your overall MVP of this book, character wise? What character would you say was the best character in this book? Because there were so many to pick from.
Yeah. I mean, my first inclination would be to pick Voyager, just with the heel turn, with the arc that she took throughout the whole book, and that very last page where she's holding the Challenger in shackles, and the last statement of he just wants to see what happens next, almost like he's almost puts you in his shoes, or makes him the reader seeing the end of the story, and she's just sitting there on an orb right next to him watching along.
What about you, Drew?
It's the Hulk. It's the big green pissed off Hulk. He picks people up and he smashes them, and that's just really great. And the good guys are like, the Hulk's here, and then they're like, oh god, no! And the bad guys are like, he's on our side. Oh god, no! And then the Challenger's like, this is my puppet. Oh god, no! And the Hulk is just reinvented for this. I think that not only my favorite character, but I think that the way that this story gives you everything you really want out of my phone's ringing now.
Bat signal.
That's got to be the Friday night chat. I just think that the way that Hawkeye's story is wrapped up in this, and the way that the Hulk comes back, really brings some closure to the Civil War II story that just basically served to destroy the character of Ms. Marvel, or I'm sorry, Captain Marvel, and put Tony Stark in a coma. Really ended up being a really good way to bring the Hulk back in this and kind of wrap that up and wrap it around. And after this, everybody heard, Al Ewing's doing a horror book with the Hulk. and for the first 6 issues, nobody bought that thing, which is why those books are worth money, because it's a really good freaking story, and the origin of that guy is in this story. I love the way the Hulk comes back. The leader of the Lethal Legion, that Kree warrior, it's just he smashes him and he's like, oh, my spine, he's broken my spine. And
That
then
was
the
a
little
good part.
psychic guy's like, oh, don't worry, I'll reach into the beast's mind. And then the next panel is just him going, no! The Hulk is so badass in this story. It's just unconscionable how powerful they make him. And you know, he basically comes back, and it's like, right, there's 3 sides, right? There's the Challenger and the Grandmaster and the Hurdles, which are the Avengers. And then the Hulk comes in and just beats up fucking everybody. And they're like, well, who wins? He's like, smash, nobody wins. And that's just the way it goes. Man, as soon as you start, you know, wanting the answers, he starts changing the questions. It's just the way it goes. Hulk.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I'm gonna have to agree with you. Like, if it wasn't for Hulk in this book, it would have been a really bad read. Hulk made it a decent read, in my opinion. If I had to pick another one, because I don't want to pick talk about the same thing you just did, I would almost say Rogue, because at least like when someone had to lead, I think she was the overall one who led all of these characters. I feel like Sam didn't do hardly anything, in my opinion. He kind of just went where he was told and was like, oh, this is a bad situation. Oh, yeah, Quicksilver's down. Oh, Human Torch is dead. And meanwhile, Rogue was just like, oh, they're going there. Let's go kick their ass. And she's absorbing Black Order people. She absorbed part of the Hulk. Like, she's actually trying to do something for the most part consistently throughout all of these issues. So surprisingly, I think Rogue was one of my other favorite characters in all of this one. The other ones were kind of just forced themselves into the background, basically. So
I would say Uncanny Avengers was probably the strongest book at the time. And she is the leader of that team. She had a lot of really great character development over the course of that run. Even I would say pick it up, because including a romance with Deadpool. So, if you're looking for more Rogue character exploration, it definitely happens in that Uncanny Avengers run. There was probably 3 runs of Uncanny Avengers. Good stuff there. And yeah, man, she became a leader, became a badass in that, and really flexed her muscles in this story. I got to agree with you. Really great character moments from her.
all right, Andy, it's time. What's your final score for No Surrender?
I'm landing at a solid 8.0. The team books just aren't my favorite, just aren't something that I normally pick up at all. This one had a lot going on to dissect, and it had a lot of, like Drew said, C+ kind of C level characters that either I didn't know anything about or I'd only just heard of and I just know of their existence. So the narration point was a struggle for me, where Drew said it's color coded so you know who's talking. And I'm like, yeah, these colors don't mean anything to me as a first time reader, though. So knowing who was narrating at the time, I had no idea. The action pacing was heavy and almost a little too heavy at points. The art definitely helps to convey it, and even at times tone the action back a little bit to help out. But at the end of the day, I'm an 8.0. It's not something that I would have picked up off the shelf and been completely enamored by, but that's, again, why I'm here to read books that I wouldn't normally read.
All right, Drew, what about you?
This is a 9.6 all day. Very few flaws in this book that keep it from being a 10.0. A couple spine ticks along the way. That's fine for me, but you get a giant cast of characters. You get the reemergence of the Hulk in his most badass form since the invention of the character. He's been revitalized Marvel as a whole. In doing so, I think this wraps up a lot of the event fatigue that people have been having from these other events like Civil War II. I think it wraps a lot of that up and gives you a nice big smash them together, let's go home at the end of the day happy kind of story. The fact that it came out weekly at the pace that it did, the quality that it is, I very much enjoy this story, and reading it makes me want to go read No Road Home, which was the sequel to this, kind of done in the same manner. That is a Hercules-centric story with really nice team-ups with Rocket Raccoon and the Immortal Hulk, which is just really fantastic. And you finally, in that book, get to see, you know, the immortal Hulk look in the eyes of Hawkeye and be like, look, Banner's forgiven you, but you are not fucking square with me, bro. So I think that, yeah, I love the way that this book came out. I love the way it was produced. I love the look of the covers. I love just, there's so much to love about this. It's a love letter to Avengers continuity. And, you know, maybe you don't get your Caps and your Iron Mans in there, but you do get a lot of the Avengers from throughout history thrown together in different combinations, which makes it really enjoyable for me. 9.6.
I think for me, I have to go. I'll give it a 7.0.
It's like you guys can't read. Jesus.
I was ready to give this a really low score, but then luckily I think Al Ewing really took the reins on the book after a while, worked in that Immortal Hulk origin, and that bumped it up quite a bit for me. That made the book so much better once they started hyping up Immortal Hulk, throwing him in the fray, and then having him fight for this, you know, last part throughout all these issues. But yeah, I mean, speaking of issues, the main issues I had with it, first off, just the inconsistent art. Just did not care for that, like I said. And I feel like this could have been trimmed down quite a bit. I feel like they had to fill 16 issues, so that's what they did. They filled 16 issues, but why make a book weekly when, anyway, I'm giving it a 7.0. So that's what I'm going with.
Let me tell you why they made it weekly. Because like many other events before, they had 6 books that were coming out monthly that they did away with when this came out. Sure. So US Avengers was done. Occupy Avengers was done. They canceled Uncanny Avengers. They canceled New Avengers, and it all came together through one Avengers book. So they took all of the creative teams, folded them together, and said, make something big, make something epic. And, you know, for my money, I think they succeeded.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that to the story's defense. I would probably rather read this story than any of those other books, maybe with the exception of Uncanny Avengers. That sounds like a solid book. U.S. Avengers, I wouldn't mind as a miniseries with Red Hulk. That sounded like fun, but I don't know if I'd stick on that for too long.
Honestly, I think there were only like 12, 14 issues of U.S. Avengers, so it might be something worth looking up on the Marvel Unlimited app. There are definitely some fantastical things going on in that book that just really, it's just fun. So in my opinion, I think it's worth checking out.
Sure. Drew, you want to tell us what we're reading next week? Because it's your wild card pick.
Oh, man. Andrew McLean wrote a fantastic book called Headlopper. It's a quarterly adventure comic. We're going to be reading the first year of Headlopper, which is just an oversized trade with 4 quarterly issues. It's about Norgal, who is very much in the vein of like a Conan type character. He is the Headlopper. He carries around with him the severed head of the Blue Witch Agatha, who is your comic relief throughout the story. And it's basically about him lopping off heads, going through a nice adventure. Art-wise, it's like Mike Mignola meets Adventure Time on acid. And and it's very cartoony, but at the same time has all the classic adventure fantasy stuff that you want to see in a book. I am a big fan of the Headlopper series. I have all of the issues that have been released so far. And I think that each trade kind of has its own feel to it. The second trade is very much like a Legend of Zelda video game kind of send up, whereas the first one is very much D&D classic fantasy. And they go off in different directions, but it's one of those books that makes you laugh, chuckle a little bit here and there, but it's just a fun adventure comic.
Nice. Well, that'll be next week. Can't wait to read that. And then, Andy, where can people find you?
Ooh, you guys can find me here every Monday on Modern Men. You can occasionally find me on Wednesday on the greatest comic book show ever for the Comic Core. You guys can find me on my own channel occasionally, dropping some content. Head over there and check out and have some fun. And you guys can find us on the Pinkies Out podcast on anchorfm.com.
Nice. What about you, Drew? Where can people find DruManchu?
Man, you can find me at work for the rest of my life since my schedule is very, very thick since returning from vacation. But beyond that, I might be dropping some knowledge for you here and there on my own channel. which is DruManchu on YouTube. You can find me there, and you can also find me here on the Comic Core. And guys, if you haven't done so yet, check out Mainframe Comic Con on YouTube. Sub them up. I know that our friend Freddie Packard is doing a D&D show every Monday during this show, so don't watch it, but watch the rewind and give them some likes over there. And I know that our friends Annie Banks and Chuck from Chuck Loads of Comics are dropping news videos over there as well. So just check it out, see if there's something over there for you.
All right, and you can find me, Seawoodard19, on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, PlayStation, Xbox, all that fun stuff. So definitely search me on all those. And until next time, guys, big thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.